rapping competition. Shout out to Mr. Whalen. With graduation fastly approaching, I'm looking forward to attending Towson University this fall with an interest in the fine arts and science program. For my topic and domain, it'll be on terrorism and counterterrorism. Specifically, how has terrorism in America progressed in the 21st century? I posed this question because I understood the ever-growing demand to prevent these attacks that have had a detrimental effect to our society. To understand how we can prevent terrorism, we first must find out how terrorism in America manifests through different forms. I believe without this evaluation, it will be extremely difficult to adapt and ultimately help save innocent lives. My thesis statement for this research is, in the last 20 years, the United States has been a prime sector for terror attacks, infiltrated on a local, state, and national level. The fluctuation of these attacks concerns the well-being of the American people, our infrastructure and safety measures, and the inspiration of hate groups all contribute to how these attacks manifest. My main research questions are focused between the timeline of 2001 until now. These questions are as follows. What was the trend back then? What is the trend now? How has this trend shifted? And lastly, how has this shift impacted the types of attacks we see now in modern terrorism threats? For my literature review, on the left and the right side, we have New America Part 1, Terrorism Cases from 2001 to today. With this primary source, I used it as an analytical data, which shows attacks that have happened from 2001 to now. Secondly, with this source by the Terrorism 2002-2005 source by the FBI, it states it gives the right information on terror attacks from 2001 to 2005. The clear distinction on whether these attacks occurred domestically or internationally correlates to the conclusion of my research. The source to the right gives incident review on what happens when an individual who is a nationalized citizen has an affiliation with a jihadist group. With my key findings, the first thing I found was most terrorist attacks occur with two targeting sides, the far-right terrorism and far-left terrorism. Far-right extreme terrorism has largely outweighed far-left terrorism in recent years. According to the organization Vision of Humanity, far-right terrorism attacks accounted for 17.2% of terror incidents in the West in 2018, compared to 6.8% of attacks, which were infiltrated by Islamist groups. Since the 9/11 attack, the only known attack that is inspired by a jihadist group was the attack on the U.S. Naval Air Station, which occurred on December 6, 2019. This attack was infiltrated by Mohammed al-Shamrani, and it ended up killing 3 people. Last year in the United States, there were no recorded attacks by a known terror group. Out of 57 terrorist events that have been recorded, 28 were committed by far-right extremists, 27 by unknown perpetrators, and 2 by jihadist-inspired extremists. In conclusion, in recent years, terrorism in America has shifted into a new phase, a phase where we see a rise of attacks inspired by far-right domestic extremism. From 2001 to 2021, the progression of terrorism in America has shifted internationally from internationally driven attacks inspired by jihadist groups to domestically charged attacks that are inspired by extreme forms of hate, largely contributed by far-right extreme terrorism. This is all in part has to do with the COVID-19 pandemic, the 2020 election results, and a growing divide in our nation sparked by political propaganda and racism.
And there's more?
These are my sources.
Oh. I have to say, I love the acknowledgement slide, but I won't let it bias my rating.
Thank you. I would just like to give a huge thanks to Dr. Michael Caruso and Ms. Tracy Wallace for this opportunity. I'd also like to thank my mom and my dad for giving me this opportunity of an education. Last but certainly not least, Mr. Boulware and Mr. Whalen, thank you for believing in me and allowing me to believe in myself. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you all, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. My experience in the Homeland Security Academy has been incredibly eye-opening. I've learned a lot about myself through this process. I've also learned to get out of my comfort zone and be open-minded to all the possibilities. Getting exposed to the real-world experiences in this program has helped me realize how important it is. It will always be an important part of our society, and the work that is pushed behind the scenes reflects that. The need to feel safe, whether technical, infrastructural, or in regards to our human race, there will always be a need to protect all aspects of our community. Thank you. Are there any questions?
A question that, well, let me first say that I know this happened before you were born, but the September the 11th attack was a moment where the country really came together. There was a lot of just positive will around the country, around the world, towards repair and trying to move past that really traumatic moment. And in my mind, it's like on the opposite side of the scale to what happened on January 6th, where we had this very televised traumatic moment that was divisive in this country. And I was curious, as somebody who's been in a Homeland Security program for 4 years, where were you intellectually and emotionally on January 6th when you were seeing that? What were you thinking?
During the January 6th Capitol riots, I definitely felt a huge divide in our country, especially in correlation to the 2020 election results. I saw that we as a country we're completely divided. There's an opposite side. There's the good and the bad. There's blue red, and it's all just a very big political scheme. Excuse me. It's just a very big politicalized and publicized scene to have seen all those events that have occurred in the Capitol. And I think that although it has died down, it's still a very monumental moment, and it is a moment that I will definitely be telling my future kids and generations after me that this is a moment where we've seen that there's a line that has been drawn in our nation.
Thank you.
I actually, Amanda, have a question about your key findings. So in your key findings, you had 28 extreme right-wing attacks and then 27 unknown perpetrators. Is it that we don't know who the perpetrators are, or we don't know what affiliation they have?
We don't know what affiliation they have.
Okay, so it is possible they could be more right-wing attacks, or it's possible they could be left-wing attacks, or they could be neither political and be a different type of terrorist attack.
Yes.
I have no further questions. What about you, Mr. Bellin?
No, I am good. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Yeah, great job, Amanda. That was very well done.
Thank you.